Welcome back to a brand new year of exciting math. Well, as you can see, we're getting into fractions. So this first video lesson is going to be on finding the common denominator, because that's going to be very important when we add and subtract fractions. So we're going to title our page Finding Common Denominators. Now, if you don't have your notebook, can't find your notebook, you're going to still make these notes, but you're going to use lined paper. Those of you who have your notebook, remember we're going to put that in our table of contents. So I'm on page 21, so I'm going to put Finding Common Denominators. So that's where mine is going to start, finding common denominators. So why would we find, or what are we doing when we find common denominators? We are renaming or rewriting the fractions, so it could be 2 fractions, 3 fractions, 4 fractions, so that the fractions name the same part of the whole. So for example, we're going to write, for example, we have 1/3 and 1/4. Okay, so you should know 1/3 means that I have one piece out of a total of 3. So 1 part or piece out of 3 total parts. Okay, so I'm going to split up my rectangle into 3 parts. 1, 2, so I've got 1, 2, 3 parts. 1/4 means I have 1 part out of 4 total parts. So it's just a little bit of a review of fractions in case you've forgotten. And it's the beginning of the new year, so we kind of have to have a little bit of review. So we're going to break this into 4 total parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So here on my 1 part would be, I would have this part here. 1 part, I have this piece here. Okay, so these 2 fractions do not name the same part of the whole. This has 3 parts in the whole, and this has 4 parts in the whole. And what happens is that when we're trying to add or subtract fractions or compare fractions, it makes it difficult because sometimes it's kind of hard to see what to do and how to solve those problems. So we have to create common denominators so that way we have the same part of the whole. So that's what we want to do. So one way is to multiply the denominators. I call this the cheaty way, because you'll see later sometimes this is not going to be your easiest way, but it is one way. So when I say one way, it doesn't mean the first way. This just is the simplest way. So one way is to multiply the denominators. Okay, so I'm going to recreate my fractional pieces from up here. So I've got 1/3. I'm going to draw a picture. Split it up into thirds and then shade 1/3 of that, and then I have 1/4, and I'm going to shade 1/4 of it, so I have 4 equal pieces. Now here's a beautiful oops that I just did. If you look at my total area of my rectangle, you can see I totally drew my rectangles differently. So this is why sometimes drawing a picture, when it's not to scale, when it's not equal pictures, can be confusing when you're comparing fractions, or if you're adding fractions or subtracting fractions, because it's kind of hard to see. Because the way I drew it, that piece almost looks the same size as that piece, but it's not, because the total size of my rectangle is different than the total size of this rectangle. So it's a beautiful oops, but we're not going to worry about it too much because we're going to use the math to find those common denominators today. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this third into fourths, and we're going to split this fourth into thirds. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. We're going to split 1/3 into fourths, and we're going to split 1/4 into thirds. So we're going to split this into 4 parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to split this into 3 parts. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and so now we can see that I've named the section. Now I have equal sections in both rectangles. I have 12 sections here and I have 12 sections here. So each rectangle has 12 sections. So now they have the same amount for each. They're broken up to the same number of pieces. So now it makes it easy to compare, it makes it easy to add, it makes it easy to subtract. So 1/3 is equal to 1, 2, I apologize because you can't see that, so I apologize for having to move the camera. 1/3 is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4 twelfths, and 1/4 is equal to 1, 2, 3 twelfths. Oops, not 13ths, twelfths. 3 twelfths. So that's one way of doing that. A second way, now I'm going to give myself some space here. A second way is to make a list of multiples. So another way is make a list of multiples. So we're going to do the same fractions again. We're going to do 1/3 and 1/4. But we're going to make a list of multiples. So multiples, and we're making the multiples, so we're listing the multiples for the denominator. So we're making the multiples for these numbers down here. I mean, it's just coincidence that we have ones for our numerators, because you're going to see later that we'll change that up a little bit. So multiples of 3. So 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 6 is 18, 3 times 7 is 21, 3 times 8 is 24, 3 times 9 is 27. So we're going to go ahead and list out 9 of them. Multiples of 4. So again, you're just using what we know of multiples. When we're just doing multiple 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. Just doing that all the way through 9. So 4 times 1, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. 4 times 6 is 24, 4 times 7 is 28, 4 times 8 is 32, 4 times 9 is 36. So we have our multiples. Now what we're going to do is we're going to circle the common denominators. Common means same. So we're going to circle the denominators that are the same. So I'm going to look through my list, and if I'm going to kind of see which ones are the same. Oh, I got 2 12s. I also have 2 24s. So I could make these two fractions have the same denominators. They can each have 12, or they can each have 24. So to rewrite the fraction would be 1/3 equals how many 12ths? And 1/4 equals how many 12ths, because now they have the same denominator. So let's do the common denominator where the common denominator is 12. The least common denominator. The least common denominator is 12, so you have to think about what can I multiply 3 by to get 12? 3 times 4. And we know from last year when I make equivalent fractions, what I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So I'm going to multiply the numerator by 4, which effectively is multiplying it by 1 because 4 over 4 is 1. So 1 times 4 is 4. But you're growing your denominator by 4, so you have to grow your numerator by 4, so that way you have an equivalent fraction. Okay, same thing over here. 4 times what and 1 times what? So 4 times 3 is 12. So I got to multiply my numerator by 3. 1 times 3 is 3, not 12. 1 times 3 is... So my two fractions are 4/12 and 3/12. Now these are not equivalent because these two fractions are not equivalent. We're making equivalent fractions with these original fractions. 4/12 equals 1/3, 3/12 equals 1/4. Now the last way is, and I'll say it the easiest way, well, I shouldn't say the last way. We're not ready for the last way yet. Sorry. The next way, well, so we can also do 24. So 1/3 equals how many 24ths, and 1/4 equals how many 24ths, because those two are also in common. So I wanted to show you that too. So 3 times 8 is 24. So 1 times 8. So it's going to be 8 24ths. And 4 times 6 is 24. 1 times 4. 1 times 4. 1 times 6, that's a big boo-boo. 1 times 6 is 6. So my, not equivalent fractions, but my equivalent fraction for 1/3 is 8 24ths, and my equivalent fraction for 1/4 is 6 24ths. Now these two fractions are equivalent because they're both equal to 1/4, and these two fractions are equivalent, but we don't need to know that. We're just making, right now, fractions that have the same denominator. Do my fractions have the same denominator? Yes. Are they equivalent to their original fractions? Yes, they're not equivalent to each other, but they're equivalent to their original fractions. So as you see here, these are two equivalent fractions. So the last way, I'm going to call it the easiest way, and I have kind of previewed it with you guys before when we've done the math warm-ups. So the easiest way is to find the least common multiple. Now, sometimes you'll see that acronym LCM, least common multiple. That's what that stands for. Find the LCM. So when you're finding equivalent fractions, you may hear a teacher say, well, don't forget to use your LCM, your least common multiple. The reason this is the easiest way is because when you have these small, you make the smallest fraction. See, 4/12 is a lot simpler than 8 24ths. And when you add and subtract, here, you may have to go back and reduce your fraction or make that fraction into a simpler form. So it kind of saves a step later on when you add and subtract fractions. So the easiest way is to find that least common multiple. So the least means the smallest number. Common is the same number, and the denominator is the number that's on the bottom of the fraction. So in my last example, the least common denominator would be 12. So the LCM would equal 12. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a few examples, and that'll be your note section for your note. That'll be finished with your notebook. So, first example, we're gonna find common denominators for 1/6 and 1/9. So we want to find the common denominator. So I like to write mine vertically because it just gives me more room. So 1/6, I leave a space for my multiples. 1/9, leave a space for my multiples. So multiples of 6, and we're going to do multiples of 9. And again, I do want you to go ahead and write them all out. It's good multiplication practice for now. Now there's going to be a few of you that are going to see some, you're going to see some pretty quick. But I'm going to let you know on this one, 54 is not your least common multiple. So it's not going to be the common denominator we want to do because I don't want to just multiply that. So 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, and 6 times 9, of course, is 54. 9s, 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, and 81. So that's when you're doing your multiples, that should be as quick as it should be. You should be getting to be that fluent with your multiplication facts. So as I go through and I look between my two columns, of course 54 is a common multiple, but if I go a little bit lower, I also see that 18 is a common denominator. And I want to use 18 because it's the least common denominator. So we're going to do common denominators with 18. So we're going to make equivalent fractions with 18. And see how I left a space? Then I put my equals and my fractions with my denominator as 18. So I got to think, what can I multiply 6 by to get 18? Well, that would be 3. So I got to multiply my numerator by 3. So we're multiplying by 3 over 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 9 times what is 18? That would be 2. 1 times 2 is 18. So my two fractions are 3/18 and 2/18. So there's problem number 1. Number 2, let's do 1/5 and 1/3. So we're going to compare 1/5 with 1/3. We want to know what the common denominator is. So again, I'm going to write my fraction, give a space, my second fraction, give a space, my multiples of 5 and my multiples of 3. So 5 should be easy. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and 45. Multiples of 3, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, and 27. So looking through, 15 looks like a common denominator. So 15 is a common denominator. Again, leave myself some space so I can see what I'm going to multiply by. 5 times what is 15? 3. So I'm going to multiply my numerator by 3. So I'm really multiplying by 1. Remember, gaining by 3, so I got to gain my numerator by 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times what is 15? So 3 times 5. Oh, I'm sorry. I did not notice that you could not see, unfortunately. So I'll give you a few seconds to look at that. I know I said it, but I know sometimes visually it's important to be able to also see. Also remember, you can pause if you need to so that you can catch up on that. I apologize. I should have made sure that you could see that. So again, we're doing denominator 15. 3 times what is 15? 3 times 5. So I'm multiplying my denominator by 5 and I'm multiplying my numerator by 5. So 1 times 5 is 5. So my common denominator was 15. And my two fractions are 3/15 and 5/15. Again, those are not equivalent. They're equivalent to my original fraction. The last one we're going to do is 2/3 and 5/9. So I want to know, what is the common denominator? So I'm going to rewrite 2/3 and leave a space and 5/9. I'm going to find my multiples of 3 and my multiples of 9. So multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27. Multiples of 9, 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, and 81. So then I can go through and I can look for my common denominators that I can use. So I go through and I automatically see I can use 9. As I go through though, I also see I could use 27. But we're going to use 9 because it's the least common multiple. So 9. So 3 times what is 9? 3 times 3. So what I multiply my denominator by, I got to multiply my numerator. 2 times 3 is 6. And then the easy one, 9 times what is 9? 9 times 1. And then of course I multiply my numerator. And yes, I do want you to show your work. So that would be 5/9. So my common denominator is 9. My other pieces, 6/9, 5/9, those are my two equivalent fractions to my original fractions of 2/3 and 5/9. Okay, so for this video lesson, I want you to write the code CD 157. Again, if you didn't have your notebook, you're going to turn this in with your Finding Denominators Work It Out worksheet, and you're going to complete that with the other video lesson. Those of you who have your notebook, you will turn this in with that Finding Common Denominators worksheet set, with that set when you turn it in, so that way you can get your points for your notes here and your notes on that worksheet. I'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks a lot, guys.